Welcome to our channel. Today, we'll dive into a story packed with drama, surprises, and heartwarming twists. Get ready to feel thrilled, satisfied, and completely hooked from beginning to end. This is the journey of a single mom janitor, a woman the world had overlooked, who shocked everyone by solving a $1 billion problem in just seconds. From that earth-shaking moment, her life would never be the same again. What the CEO did next not only left the entire company speechless, but also led to an ending no one expected. Respect that turned into love, and a love that sparked the desire for marriage. If you want to experience a story that's dramatic, moving, and guaranteed to warm your heart, then this is the video for you. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming inspiring and unexpected stories. In a skyscraper at the heart of the city, where expensive suits and luxury watches were the silent symbols of power, few people paid attention to a petite woman in a faded janitor's uniform. Her name was Lan, let's call her Anna in the international version, a single mum whose eyes carried fatigue yet shone with an unbreakable will. Lan started her day long before most people even brewed their morning coffee. In her hands weren't laptops or financial reports, but a mop, a broom, and a cart stacked with cleaning supplies. Yet, don't be fooled. Those very hands, accustomed to dust and floors, were about to accomplish what an entire board of seasoned executives had failed to do. The company was facing a $1 billion crisis. That word, billion, sounded abstract, but in the world of finance, it was enough to topple an empire. Around the boardroom table, experts scribbled frantic diagrams, tossing out buzzwords: liquidity crunch, a situation where a company has assets but can't convert them into cash fast enough to pay bills; supply chain disruption, when vital goods and materials can't reach their destination; and an avalanche of numbers that would make any ordinary employee want to doze off. Meanwhile, Lan quietly wiped down a table in the corner. Everyone assumed she wasn't listening, but in truth, every word sank into her mind like puzzle pieces falling into place. She wasn't naive. Years ago, Lan had been a brilliant math student, but life had forced her to drop out and take janitorial work to raise her child. That dormant knowledge was now slowly awakening. Sometimes life is cruel enough to make us sit in the wrong seat, only for us to realize we belong to another world entirely. Lan wasn't invited to the boardroom table, yet her mind was racing faster than those paid millions to sit there. And then, in that moment, when the room fell silent, executives stumped and frustrated, Lan chuckled softly. Maybe you're all looking at this the wrong way. The problem isn't in the balance sheet itself. It's in the way you're reading it. The room froze. A janitor had just spoken up in the middle of a billion-dollar meeting. Ridiculous. And yet, sometimes it's that very ridiculousness that sets the stage for the unthinkable. The atmosphere in the boardroom thickened after Lan's words. A few faces broke into mocking laughter, the kind that said, "A janitor daring to comment on a billion-dollar issue." One overweight executive snorted, his voice dripping with disdain. "What do you know about a balance sheet? This is a matter for Harvard and Stanford graduates, not janitors." The room erupted with chuckles, but amidst the laughter, the CEO didn't join in. Instead, he fixed his eyes on Lan as if detecting something unusual. In the world of business, bold ideas often came from the most unexpected places. Lan didn't flinch. She set her mop aside, walked toward the whiteboard, and tapped her finger on the very spot they'd been debating all morning. "You've been staring at assets and liabilities, without realizing the real issue lies in how you're calculating." "Goodwill," she said calmly. Some people blinked in confusion. Goodwill. In business, this meant the intangible commercial advantage, brand reputation, customer trust, the value of a name. You couldn't see it in a warehouse or touch it in a vault, but it could be worth billions. And if it was miscalculated or overinflated, the financial statements could turn into a farce. Lan went on, "You're blaming the supply chain and cash flow. But the truth is, this company overpaid for Brand X last year, then recorded goodwill at a number far beyond its real value. Now that the market has dropped, that inflated goodwill has turned into a massive loss. The fix is simple. Revalue it. Write down the goodwill. The picture clears up instantly." The room fell silent. The overweight executive's face flushed red, while the CEO raised his brows, clearly shaken. Her words were like an arrow straight to the heart of the problem. For so long, these well-paid minds had hunted for complicated fixes while overlooking the simplest flaw. Someone whispered, "God, why didn't anyone think of this sooner?" The CEO nodded slowly. In his eyes wasn't just admiration, but a flicker of curiosity. How could a woman so underestimated, doing such a humble job, possess a mind this sharp? The air in the boardroom felt like someone had sucked all the oxygen out. Executives who were used to holding power suddenly felt small in front of a janitor. They glanced nervously at each other, while the CEO folded his arms, his eyes gleaming as if weighing something monumental. Lan didn't stop. She picked up a marker and scribbled a few numbers on the whiteboard. Her handwriting trembled slightly. It had been years since she last touched a whiteboard. But her math was sharp and undeniable. Let's say the company bought brand X for $2 billion, but its real value was closer to $1.2 billion. The $800 million difference was recorded as goodwill. When the market was booming, maybe that looked acceptable. But when the market crashed, the goodwill had to be written down. If you don't, you're left staring at massive losses without knowing why. She paused, smiling lightly. It's like dating. If you put someone on too high a pedestal, seeing them as flawless, disappointment is inevitable. Goodwill works the same way. Inflate it too much, and when reality hits, the heartbreak is 10 times worse. This time, the room laughed, not with ridicule, but in recognition. One young director even nodded. That's a good analogy. The CEO stepped forward, took the marker, and looked Lan straight in the eye. Keep going. I want to hear your full analysis. Lan blinked in surprise, but then her eyes lit up. It had been so long since she'd had the chance to use her true intellect. Her reasoning flowed, clear, precise, like a symphony where every note landed perfectly. An hour later, the once tense boardroom had eased. Everyone realized the problem wasn't no solution, but rather no one daring to face the simplest one. And the person who unlocked that door was a single mom janitor. The CEO leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving Lan. A thought flickered through his mind. Maybe this woman wasn't just anyone. Maybe she was fate placed right in front of me. The boardroom felt like it had just weathered an intellectual storm. The once proud faces now carried a mix of caution and reluctant admiration. Some executives scribbled furiously to capture Lan's points, while others sat in silence, avoiding her gaze, afraid that mocking her again would only expose their own incompetence. The CEO rose. He tapped his pen against the table, commanding silence. We've spent weeks debating, yet found no solution. Today, someone all of you underestimated pointed out the core issue in minutes. I want to hear it from you. Do we have the courage to admit she's right? The silence dragged on. A few directors hesitantly nodded. Then more heads followed. At last, the room bowed. Not to Lan personally, but to the undeniable truth. A janitor had just taught them a lesson in intelligence and humility. Lan blushed. She had never intended to play the hero. To her, it was simply a matter of pointing out what was wrong. Yet in that moment, she realized something. The years of scrubbing floors hadn't extinguished her true self. They had only made her brilliance burn brighter when it finally had a chance to shine. The CEO's gaze lingered on her. It wasn't just the respect of a leader toward an employee. There was something more. A flicker of warmth, a spark of curiosity, even a stirring he hadn't felt in years. A man consumed by power and numbers was suddenly reminded he still had a heart. When the meeting ended, the CEO walked up to Lan. Not with the posture of a superior, but with rare sincerity. Thank you. You just saved this company from disaster, and I think I'd like to know more about who you really are. Lan froze for a moment, then gave a small nod. Inside her, something stirred gently, like a breeze across a still lake. She had no idea that from this very moment, not only the fate of a company would change, but the heart of its CEO was about to take a new direction. The next morning, the skyscraper felt different. Word had spread like wildfire. The single mom janitor saved the company from losing $1 billion. People whispered in the hallways, gossiped in elevators. Even the cafeteria buzzed with chatter. Some were admiring, some jealous, others bitter. Probably just dumb luck. The CEO must have staged it to save face. But no one could deny, Lan had done what dozens of experts could not. Lan carried on with her routine. Mop in hand, eyes cast down, she tried to avoid the stares. She had no desire to be in the spotlight. For her, the only thing that mattered was making enough to raise her child. Paying rent, tuition, bills. Glory was never something she thought belonged to her. Yet today, something unusual happened. The CEO himself appeared in the 10th floor hallway, right where Lan was mopping. Tall, imposing in a perfectly tailored suit, polished shoes gleaming, a stark contrast to her worn sneakers. "Good morning," he said, his voice deeper and warmer than the day before. Lan startled, expecting it to be mere politeness. But no. He stopped, waiting for her to lift her head. In that instant, his eyes no longer held the cold authority of a powerful leader, but the curiosity of a man who truly wanted to know her. "Are you free tonight? I'd like to take you to dinner." Not as CEO and employee, but as a man wanting to thank the woman who changed everything. The invitation landed like a bomb in Lan's heart. She stammered, her cheeks burning. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. "I'm just a janitor. He's the CEO. Two different worlds. Should I even say yes?" And yet, the sincerity in his gaze slowly melted every wall she had built around herself. That afternoon, Lan returned to her small apartment. Barely 30 square meters, it was still the whole world for her and her daughter. The living room doubled as the dining room. Her daughter's study desk was tucked by the window, and the bed was just big enough for the two of them to fit. She dropped onto the worn sofa, tilting her head back. The CEO's words replayed in her mind. "I'd like to take you to dinner, not as CEO and employee, but as a man." Lan chuckled to herself, half bewildered, half amused. "Oh my God, I must be hallucinating. He's a CEO, and I'm just a janitor. He dines at 5-star restaurants, while I share instant noodles with my kid." Her little daughter Mai came out from her study corner. Seeing her mother smiling absent-mindedly, she tilted her head. "Mom, why are you laughing to yourself?" "Something good happened." Lan hesitated. She couldn't tell the full story, but her smile betrayed her. "Yeah, someone thanked me today. Someone I never thought would notice me." Mai's eyes widened. Then she said innocently, "That makes sense. You're really smart, Mum. Why wouldn't someone notice you? Maybe he even likes you." Lan burst out laughing, though her laughter carried a trace of emotion. Sometimes children saw things more simply than adults, and in that simplicity, there was often truth. She stood up and made a modest dinner of fried eggs and vegetable soup. Yet tonight, even cooking felt different. Her hands trembled slightly, her heart raced, and the question kept circling in her head. Should I say yes? Outside, the sunset painted the city in shades of orange and red. A new day awaited Lan, a day when she would have to make a decision that could change her life forever. That night, Lan couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, shifting left and right. Beside her, little Mai slept soundly, occasionally wrapping her tiny arm around her mother's. In the dark, Lan whispered to herself, "He's a CEO. And me? Do I even deserve this?" The next morning, she resolved to decline. Better to stay safe, she told herself. But life rarely followed such neat plans. At 6 p.m. sharp, a sleek car pulled up outside the building. The window rolled down. The CEO, dressed in a dark suit with his tie loosened just enough to soften his usual severity. "Changed your mind yet?" he asked, his voice both firm and gentle. Lan stammered, I don't think I belong in the kind of restaurant you'd take me to." The CEO chuckled softly. "Perfect, because I wasn't planning on taking you to a 5-star restaurant. I know a little spot with good food, no fancy cutlery required, as long as you'll enjoy it." The reply caught Lan off guard. She looked at him, hesitation flickering in her eyes, then finally nodded. They arrived at a cozy little eatery, lit with warm yellow lamps that made it feel inviting. The menu was simple: feo, spring rolls, fried rice. Lan instantly relaxed, no longer worrying about silverware etiquette or high-class manners. The CEO ordered beef pho. Lan chose spring rolls. When the steaming bowl was set before him, Lan chuckled. "You know, this is the first time I've seen a CEO slurp pho at a street-side spot." He shrugged. "Honestly, pho tastes far better than those over-engineered dishes at fancy places. And tonight, I don't want to be a CEO. I just want to be a man talking to a remarkable woman." Her heart skipped a beat. In that moment, Lan realized, sometimes distance wasn't created by wealth or status, but by the walls we built ourselves. And tonight, those walls were quietly crumbling. Dinner lingered on, Not because of the food, but because of the conversation. Lan spoke about her school days, her abandoned passion for mathematics. She laughed as she told stories of meeting deadlines with nothing but a mop, and the little tricks she used to stretch money just enough to pay her daughter's tuition. The CEO listened intently, his eyes fixed on her. Every so often he laughed. Not the polite laugh of a businessman, but a genuine, unguarded laugh. It had been so long since he'd felt he could sit across from someone without thinking about financial reports, profit margins, or shareholder pressure. When they left the restaurant, the night was late. The street was quiet, bathed in the amber glow of streetlights. A cool breeze drifted by, sending Lan's hair fluttering. "Thank you for agreeing to dinner with me," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I know. You probably think there's too much distance between us, but I don't see that. I only see a woman who's intelligent, strong, and worthy of being heard." Lan froze for a moment. No one had ever looked at her like that before. To everyone else, she was just a single mom janitor. But now, standing before her, was a powerful man who saw her as something extraordinary. In that awkward pause, a sudden gust of wind blew past. Lan stumbled slightly. The CEO reacted instinctively, catching her by the shoulder. Just a fleeting touch, but both of their hearts seemed to stop. Lan quickly stepped back, her cheeks flushed. He cleared his throat, suppressing a smile. But in their eyes, a spark had already ignited. A spark they both recognized, even if they didn't dare name it. That night, back in her small apartment, Lan lay awake, her heart still pounding. That dinner had not just been a meal, it was the beginning of something much greater. Something she wasn't yet ready to put into words. The next morning, the company building buzzed like a secret marketplace, not because of a new contract or a quarterly report, but because of rumors. The CEO had dinner with the janitor. "No, I heard she's a single mum." Come on, that can't be true. A CEO paying attention to someone like that? On every floor, in every meeting room, even by the coffee machine. Gossip spread like wildfire. In a company where the social ladder was crystal clear, executives in luxury cars, office staff behind computers, janitors cleaning silently. This story was nothing short of an explosion. Lan caught whispers as she stepped into the elevator. A group of young employees glanced at her, stifling giggles behind their hands. She pretended not to notice, eyes fixed on the floor button. But inside, unease grew stronger. In a place where every glance could turn into judgment, Lan felt like a fish trapped in a glass tank. Everyone watching, everyone staring. Meanwhile, the CEO made no effort to hide. He strode into the main lobby, walked straight through the crowd of employees, and stopped when he saw Lan pushing her cleaning cart. In front of dozens of curious eyes, he smiled and nodded. "Good morning, Lan." 4 simple words, but they struck like lightning through the lobby. The CEO had never once addressed a janitor by name in front of everyone. Lan's cheeks flushed as she bowed her head in reply, but her heart pounded so loudly she feared others might hear it. In a shadowed corner, a senior executive frowned. To him, this was no longer harmless gossip. If the CEO truly cared about a janitor, the balance of power inside the company might shift. And when power wavers, someone always feels threatened. After that morning, the company split into 2 clear camps. One admired Lan. They whispered to each other, "She's really brilliant. Without her, the company would have lost $1 billion. Honestly, she's sharper than some of those $1 million consultants," the other camp sneered, dismissing her as nothing more than a janitor who got lucky. Snide remarks trailed behind her wherever she went. A janitor is still a janitor. Solving one problem doesn't make her royalty. The CEO is probably just infatuated. It'll fade like soap bubbles. Each word cut like a blade, but Lan bit her lip and endured. She was used to being underestimated. The only difference now was that every jab carried the CEO's name along with hers. They weren't just mocking her, they were subtly targeting him too. Meanwhile, on the top floor, a different conversation unfolded. A small group of senior executives gathered in a closed-door meeting. The man who had frowned the day before led the charge. "You've all seen it," he said coldly. "The CEO is letting emotions cloud his judgment. If he loses focus, the company will waver, and we could lose our positions," another muttered. "So what are you suggesting we do?" He nodded grimly. "Exactly. We need to wake him up, and the quickest way is to get rid of her." Silence blanketed the room, but the glint in their eyes betrayed their thoughts. A power game had begun, and at its center was a single mom janitor, unaware she had become the thorn in the side of the powerful. A week later, strange things began to happen. Lan was suddenly assigned to clean areas she had never been tasked with before, the executive floors, where directors had private offices. Normally, janitors weren't allowed up there without a special work order. Yet somehow, her schedule kept changing, sending her there again and again. Stranger still, complaints followed wherever she went. Minutes after she finished cleaning, reports came in. Lan missed some trash. The floor wasn't spotless. Even whispers that she had spilled coffee on important documents. Lan was stunned. She had never been careless like that, but the complaints piled up, as if someone were deliberately fabricating them. In the cafeteria, employees whispered, "I heard she's about to get fired." Yeah, how long can the CEO protect her? Once the board steps in, she's done. Lan overheard, her heart sinking. 1,000 thoughts swirled in her mind. Did I really mess up? Or is this just because I had dinner with the CEO? That night, she told her daughter about it over dinner. Mai sat silently, her young eyes wide with worry. "Mum, is it because they hate you for being smarter than them?" The innocent question brought tears to Lan's eyes. Sometimes children said the very thing adults refused to admit. She quickly wiped her tears and forced a smile. "It's okay, honey. I've weathered storms before. A little headwind won't break me." But deep down she knew this was no longer about janitorial work. This was a battle of power. And she, a single mom janitor, had become its unwilling centerpiece. One afternoon, during a meeting with senior executives, the CEO was handed a thick folder by his secretary. Inside was a list of mistakes allegedly committed by Lan. Missed trash, dirty floors, ruined documents. One director cleared his throat. "You see, she's caused too many problems. For someone in her position, termination is normal procedure. We can't let someone like her damage the company's reputation." The CEO flipped through the pages, his eyes growing colder. He knew Lan. He had witnessed her meticulousness, her sharp mind, her integrity. These accusations were nonsense and the clumsy handiwork of a setup. He slammed the folder shut, his voice cutting through the room. "Enough. I don't believe these accusations. She didn't just save this company from a billion-dollar disaster. She proved herself to be honest and dedicated in a way few are. I will not allow her to be sacrificed in this petty power game." The room froze. Faces paled. No one had expected the CEO to defend Lan so openly in front of the board. He continued, his tone sharp as a blade. "If anyone here thinks they can undermine me by targeting an innocent woman, think again, because I will stand by her, no matter what." The atmosphere tightened like a drawn bowstring. Some executives fell silent, lowering their heads. But one thing was clear. From that moment, the entire company knew Lan was no longer alone. Out in the hallway, Lan stood frozen. She had accidentally overheard every word echoing from the boardroom. Tears welled up, not from pain, but from the realization that for the first time in her life, a powerful man had chosen to protect her against the world. In her heart, a fragile yet warm seed began to sprout. That seed was love. After that stormy boardroom meeting, the atmosphere in the company shifted. No one dared openly criticize Lan anymore, though curious stares still followed her everywhere. To many, she was no longer the anonymous janitor, but the woman the CEO protected. Lan felt the pressure, but there was also a warmth she couldn't deny. In the days that followed, the CEO made no effort to hide his concern. He often stopped by where she worked, sometimes just to ask, "How are you today? Has anyone been bothering you?" Such simple questions touched her more deeply than any flowery words. She wasn't used to anyone caring about her feelings. Since her husband had left, her life had revolved solely around work and her daughter. Yet now, the most powerful man in the company looked at her with unguarded sincerity. One evening, the CEO called Lan. "Would you like to join me and my daughter for a walk in the park? I think she'd love to make a new friend." Lan was surprised. She hadn't expected him to invite her in a family setting. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. At the park, the scene was serene. Golden lights glowed over the brick paths, children played nearby, and soft music drifted from afar. The CEO held his young son's hand, while Lan guided little Mai. The two children quickly bonded, chattering away like lifelong friends. Watching them, Lan felt something unfamiliar rise within her. The image of a family. Not the picture-perfect kind from magazines, but a simple one, where two once-broken hearts found peace side by side. The CEO tilted his head slightly, eyes resting on Lan. In his gaze there wasn't just gratitude, but something deeper, harder to hide. A stirring of affection. The children ran through the park, their laughter echoing into the night. Mai quickly grabbed the CEO's son by the hand, pulling him toward the lanterns strung along the path. Lan watched them, warmth flooding her chest. She had never imagined standing beside a CEO, sharing such a peaceful evening, like a small family. The CEO walked slowly beside her, keeping just enough distance to avoid making her uncomfortable, yet close enough so she wouldn't feel alone. "You know," he said softly, his voice deep and calm, "I've attended hundreds of galas, press conferences, events, but nothing has ever felt as peaceful as this moment." Lan smiled, eyes on her daughter. "Peace is what people forget when they're too busy chasing numbers and contracts. For me, seeing Mai laugh is all I need." The CEO turned toward her, his gaze holding her words. "Maybe that's what I've been missing. I've been so obsessed with building an empire, I forgot the simplest things." For a moment, silence fell, broken only by the wind rustling through the trees. Then suddenly his son tripped over a small stone and fell. May rushed to help him up, brushing the dirt from his knee, saying gently, "It's okay, I'm here." The scene made the CEO chuckle, while Lan felt a swell of emotion. In that instant, it seemed two lonely families had begun to merge. When the evening ended, the CEO escorted Lan and Mai to their modest apartment. Before leaving, he hesitated, then said, "Thank you for tonight, and, if you don't mind, I'd like many more nights like this." Lan froze, her heart trembling, not because of luxury or power, but because for the first time she saw in the city's most powerful man a sincere heart. In the days that followed, Lan tried to keep her life unchanged. Mornings still meant rushing Mai off to school, then heading to the company for work, but somehow everything felt different now. Each time she entered the lobby, she sensed a familiar gaze following her, not obvious, but enough to make her heartbeat quicken. One day, while Lan was mopping the fifth-floor hallway, the CEO appeared. He wasn't alone. Several managers were with him, deep in discussion about financial strategy. Yet when he saw Lan, he gave a small smile. "Good morning, Lan." Just one greeting, but it froze the entire corridor. The managers exchanged stunned looks. None of them had ever seen the CEO show such attention to any employee, let alone a janitor. Lan's cheeks flushed as she bowed quickly, pretending to focus on her mop. But inside, her heart raced wildly. That afternoon, a message appeared on her phone. "Would you and Mai like to join me and my son at the zoo this weekend? I think the kids would enjoy it." Lan stared at the screen, caught between joy and fear. She didn't know how to respond. In her head, a voice whispered, "I'm just a janitor and he's the CEO. If this goes further, can I withstand the world's judgment?" That night she tossed and turned. The memory of their simple dinner, his sincere gaze, the laughter in the park, all of it returned like waves crashing over her. And she realized her heart was already betraying her logic. She had started to fall for him. The weekend arrived faster than Lan expected. The night before, she lay awake, torn. Should she go or not? On one hand, she feared the stares, the whispers, the judgment that might hurt her daughter. On the other, her heart whispered, "This is a chance for your child to smile, for you to feel like an ordinary woman, even just for a day." That morning, May ran excitedly around the apartment, clutching her mother's arm. "Mom, we're really going to the zoo?" "I've never gone with a new friend and with a CEO before." Lan laughed, though her smile was tinged with emotion. Children were so simple. They saw joy, not the shadows of judgment. At 9 sharp, a sleek SUV pulled up in front of Lan's shabby apartment building. The CEO stepped out with his young son, smiling as if nothing in the world mattered, unconcerned with the neighbors peeking from behind curtains. "Shall we go?" he asked, like it was the most natural thing. Lan hesitated, then took Mai's hand and walked forward. In that moment, she realized she had chosen. not chosen to fight against prejudice, but to choose her daughter's happiness and her own heart. Inside the car, the children chattered endlessly, their laughter filling the space. The CEO glanced at Lan and said softly, "Thank you for coming. I know, this isn't easy for you." Lan pressed her lips together, then replied gently, "Some things aren't easy, but they're worth trying." Their eyes met in that instant. No more words were needed. Both knew a new door had opened, and once stepped through, there would be no going back to the way things were. The zoo buzzed with weekend crowds. Children shouted in excitement, their voices mingling with the cries of animals. Mai dashed alongside the CEO's son, pointing eagerly. "Look, a lion! It's huge! And over there, a giraffe, taller than a building!" The two kids held hands, laughing uncontrollably, as if they'd been friends forever. Lan walked slowly behind them, calling out from time to time, "Mai, don't run too fast, you'll trip." The CEO smiled quietly, keeping pace beside her. He didn't interrupt the children's joy, but leaned toward Lan occasionally, speaking softly. "I've never seen my son this happy. Normally, he barely smiles. Maybe because his mother passed away so early." Lan froze for a moment. She hadn't expected that behind his powerful exterior. The CEO carried deep scars of his own. She nodded gently. "I understand. I've raised Mai on my own since she was little. There are gaps. Nothing can ever fill them. But at least today, the kids have found happiness." His eyes rested on her with deep empathy. For the first time, they both realized they weren't just CEO and janitor. They were two people carrying similar wounds. As they passed the penguin exhibit, one suddenly splashed water at the glass. Mai squealed, drenched, while the CEO's son burst into laughter. Lan rushed over in alarm, but Mai laughed heartily. "It's okay, Mom. I love it. My first penguin attack ever." Laughter spread, and even the CEO joined in. In that moment, there were no titles, no hierarchies. Just two parents watching their children's joy. Lan turned, catching the CEO's gaze. His smile wasn't the polite smile of the business world, but a genuine, warm smile, as if he were looking at a true partner in life. Her heart trembled. Perhaps, for the first time in years, she was touching the simple happiness of a family. The group moved deeper into the zoo. The two kids ran ahead, laughing and pointing excitedly. Then suddenly Mai tripped on a pebble and fell forward. "Mai!" Lan cried out in panic. Before she could reach her, the CEO was already there. He swooped down, catching Mai and lifting her to her feet. For a moment, his face showed genuine worry, a far cry from his usual composed expression. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice roughened with concern. Mai bit her lip and forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just a little scratch." Lan knelt down, checking her daughter's knee, relieved to see it was only a minor scrape. Yet her heart ached. For years, she had faced everything alone, never having someone else's hands there to catch her child. Seeing the CEO cradle her daughter stirred something deep inside her. He pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket and gently tied it around Mai's knee. Lan watched him, and before she could stop herself, she said softly, "You seem experienced, like you've cared for a daughter before." The CEO looked up, pausing for a beat, then gave a wistful smile. "I once wished for a daughter, but my wife died in childbirth. All I had left was my son. Maybe tonight, fate gave me a chance to do something I never could." Lan was speechless. His words cut to the core. A man who seemed to have everything, carried a wound no wealth could ever heal. For the rest of the visit, the children played happily, while Lan and the CEO stayed mostly quiet. Not an awkward silence, but one heavy with unspoken meaning. Two souls quietly finding each other amid the noise. As they left the zoo, Mai perched on the CEO's shoulders, laughing down the path. Watching the scene, Lan realized the wall between them was beginning to crack, and sometimes it only takes a small fall to open a greater path for the heart. By Monday, the company buzzed like a giant gossip tabloid. Everyone had breaking news to share. I saw it with my own eyes. The CEO carrying her daughter on his shoulders at the zoo. Not just that, his son was playing with her daughter like they were siblings. Oh my God, no more doubt. The CEO is definitely into that janitor. Whispers spread like wildfire from HR to finance, from coffee stations to the boardroom. When Lan stepped into the elevator, it wasn't hard to catch the murmurs behind her. Who does she think she is? One dinner, one outing, and she thinks she can climb that high. Just wait. The CEO's just having fun. Rich men get bored quickly. Lan's chest tightened, her grip tightening around her mop handle. She wasn't afraid of contempt aimed at her, but she feared Mai would be dragged into it. Her innocent daughter had no idea how cruel gossip could be. Meanwhile, in his top-floor office, the CEO gazed out over the city through glass walls. His assistant reported, "Sir, the board is starting to raise concerns. They say you're letting personal matters affect the company's image." The CEO smirked, his smile cold. Personal matters? Then they'd better remember who saved this company from losing $1 billion. If they think gossip can be used to corner me, they're mistaken. That night, Lan sat quietly in her small apartment. Mai beamed beside her, chattering innocently. "Mum, today I told my friends about our zoo trip. They said I'm so lucky." Lan smiled faintly, torn between two feelings: joy at her daughter's happiness and fear that very joy might become fuel for people's cruelty. What she didn't know was that elsewhere, a group of directors was plotting. Gossip was never the end game. It was merely the opening move in a much larger attack. One morning, as soon as Lan arrived at the company, she received a notice from HR. The paper was cold, with only one line: "Requested to meet regarding issues related to your work." Her chest tightened. A flood of worst-case scenarios raced through her mind. When she entered the room, 3 people were waiting: the head of HR, a senior director, and a corporate lawyer. The air was heavy, more like a courtroom than a workplace. The HR head began reading, voice flat. "There have been multiple reports of Ms. Lan violating workplace rules. Specifically, unauthorized entry into restricted areas, causing asset loss, and conduct unbecoming of the company's image." Lan froze. The accusations were completely false, yet framed in a way that sounded almost legitimate. She steadied herself and replied, "I've never entered any restricted area without assignment. And asset loss. Could you clarify what that means?" The senior director across the table smirked. "Reports say you've been regularly taking company property home." Lan's heart sank. Company property? They meant the bottles of floor cleaner, the rolls of paper towels she'd occasionally been allowed to bring home to keep her modest apartment clean. Something so trivial, now twisted into evidence against her. The lawyer added coldly, "We could terminate you immediately. However, the board has decided to give you a chance to explain yourself." Lan's hands trembled as she gripped her uniform. Only one question echoed in her mind. This is a setup. But does the CEO know about it? And will he come in time to save me again? While Lan sat in the HR office, her heart squeezed tight, the CEO upstairs had just received an internal report. As he flipped through the first pages, his face darkened. The false accusations against Lan were detailed, complete with witnesses and evidence. To an outsider, it would look convincing. But the CEO wasn't so easily fooled. He knew exactly who was behind it. The directors who had been openly dissatisfied with him ever since the billion-dollar crisis. He slammed the file shut and stood abruptly. "They think I'll sit quietly while they pull this cheap stunt." His assistant stammered, "Sir, they've already begun questioning Ms. Lan in HR. It seems they're using group pressure to force her into signing a resignation letter." Fury blazed in the CEO's eyes. Without hesitation, he stormed out, the sound of his footsteps echoing down the hall. Employees glanced up, startled, then quickly moved aside at the sight of his taut expression. In the HR office, Lan tried to stay composed as questions piled on. The HR head slid a paper toward her. "If you sign this, we'll consider the matter settled quietly. You'll still receive some compensation. If not..." The door burst open so hard it rattled the room. The CEO strode in, eyes sweeping across everyone, his voice sharp as steel. "Compensation! Quiet settlement. Who gave you the right to threaten my employee?" The room froze. Lan looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. She had never seen him so furious, and never felt so utterly protected. The HR office fell into a heavy silence. Faces that had been stern moments ago now flickered with unease as the CEO stood before them. The head of HR rose quickly, voice trembling. "Sir, we're only following procedure," the CEO smirked coldly. "Procedure? What procedure allows you to fabricate baseless accusations and force an employee to resign?" A senior director in the corner spoke up, trying to sound calm. Sir, we have witnesses and evidence. We only want to protect the company's image. The CEO's tone sharpened. Protect the company's image, or protect your seats. Don't forget who saved this company from losing $1 billion in seconds. And don't forget who was the only one brave enough to see the real problem. Lan sat quietly, clutching her uniform, her heart torn between fear and awe. She had never seen a CEO so powerful openly defend a janitor. The CEO stepped closer, his gaze piercing the men across from him. From this day forward, if anyone dares to bring up firing Ms. Lan without hard evidence, prepare to submit your own resignation first. The words cracked like thunder. The HR head lowered his head. The senior director broke into a cold sweat. No one in the room dared to breathe too loudly. Then the CEO turned to Lan, his voice softening. You don't need to worry. No one can force you out of here. You're not just an employee in this company. You're someone I trust. Lan's vision blurred with tears. In that moment, she heard not just the protection of a boss, but something deeper, a silent promise from his heart. The meeting ended, and those who had been aggressive now slunk out of the HR office, pale-faced and silent. Lan still sat there, her hands trembling, her heart pounding as if it might burst. The CEO waited until the door closed and the room was empty. He stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on the table, leaning down to meet her eyes. Are you all right? His voice softened, no longer the steel edge it had carried moments earlier. Lan looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. She tried to hold them back, but the words spilled out. Why did you do that? Aren't you afraid they'll turn against you? They might even try to bring you down too. He gave a faint smile, one that transformed his stern face into something warm. Lan, I've faced countless enemies out there, but none have ever made me fight as fiercely as seeing you cornered. I couldn't just sit still. Not as a CEO, but as a man, her heart jolted. The words struck straight through every wall she had built around herself. She shook her head, her voice trembling. But I'm just a janitor, a single mom. I don't belong in your world. He sat down across from her, his gaze steady and unwavering. My world has money, power, prestige, but it lacks trust. It lacks peace. And in just a few short days, you've given me more than all of that combined. Lan said nothing. Tears spilled, not from pain, but from the raw truth in his words. In that moment, the gap between CEO and janitor, rich and poor, powerful and powerless, dissolved. All that remained was a man and a woman, looking at each other with the most genuine eyes. The HR office now held only the two of them, but the air was still charged, not with fear, but with sudden closeness. Lan lowered her head, hands clasped tightly, unsure what more to say. The CEO was silent for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a neatly folded handkerchief. He offered it to her gently. Wipe your tears. I don't want to see you crying because of people who don't deserve you. Lan took it, her fingers brushing against his. The touch was fleeting, yet it startled her, while he only smiled. Lan, he said softly, from now on, if anyone wants to hurt you, they'll have to go through me first. Her heart clenched. His words weren't empty promises, but real protection. From a man used to carrying the weight of the world. She bit her lip, whispering, You don't have to do this for me. I'm just… No, he interrupted, his eyes locking onto hers. You're not just anything. To me, you're the first woman who's made me feel that I'm not alone. Silence fell, so deep they could hear their own heartbeats. Lan turned her face away, flustered. But when she looked back, his gaze was still there. Steady, warm, unwavering. For a brief moment, the distance between them shrank, not with words, but with silence full of meaning. And Lan knew, from this day forward, their story had turned a new page, the page of the heart. Rumors in the company didn't die down. They exploded after the HR incident. People whispered. The CEO openly defended her. No doubt about it now, there's definitely something going on. But seriously, a single mum janitor standing beside the CEO sounds like a fairy tale. In the hallways, Lan felt the stares, some disdainful, some envious. A few colleagues avoided her, afraid of being dragged into the drama, while others watched her like the lead character in a soap opera. Lan tried to remain calm, but inside, her heart weighed heavy. All she wanted was to work and raise her daughter, but now every step she took had become gossip fodder. Meanwhile, the board of directors applied direct pressure. In a closed-door meeting, an elder member's voice cut sharply. "You cannot let your personal life tarnish the company's image. We demand that you distance yourself from that employee. Otherwise, we'll be forced to reconsider your position." The room went silent, waiting for his response. The CEO leaned back in his chair, eyes gleaming with resolve. He knew this wasn't just about romance. It was a battle between the heart and power. That night in her small apartment, Lan watched her daughter sleeping peacefully. Her heart knotted with worry. She knew she had been dragged into a fight far bigger than herself. And one question haunted her. Was this love worth risking everything? The boardroom that morning felt like a brewing storm. A dozen powerful, seasoned, and cunning faces sat around the long, polished table. The air thickened with scrutiny. The chairman spoke first, voice dry. "We respect your leadership, but this company cannot be a stage for personal affairs to taint its reputation. If you want to keep your position as CEO, you must end your relationship with that janitor." The faint tapping of pens, the scrape of chairs echoed. Silence settled as they awaited his answer. The CEO sat still for a moment, then rose slowly. He needed no notes, no assistant. His eyes, sharp as blades, swept across every face. "You tell me to choose between the company and a woman, but you forget one thing. That woman saved this company from losing $1 billion. If you think I'll discard the company's savior just to preserve appearances, you're mistaken." A younger director frowned. "You're letting emotions override reason. A company can't run on emotions." The CEO's voice hardened. "No, I'm letting truth lead the way. And the truth is, she has intelligence, integrity, and value. Things some in this room have never shown. This company survives because of those who step up in crisis, not those who sit back and judge." The room thickened with tension. Faces darkened, teeth clenched, yet a few eyes wavered, stirred by his words. The CEO finished, his voice hammering down. "I will not abandon her. If you want another CEO, so be it. But remember this. A company can replace a CEO, but it cannot replace a heart once it loses fairness." Silence engulfed the boardroom, and everyone knew. The war between love and power had entered its fiercest stage. News from the closed-door meeting didn't stay closed for long. In a company where gossip spread faster than internal emails, within hours the CEO's words were whispered on every floor. "I will not abandon her. If you want another CEO, so be it." The words spread like wildfire. Some gasped in shock, others shook their heads, and some even grinned with admiration. A marketing employee whispered to a colleague. He challenged the board outright. Imagine, a CEO daring to put love above his own position. At the reception desk, a young woman's eyes sparkled. "It's like a drama come to life. If this were a TV show, I'd call it cheesy. But now, I'm impressed." Not everyone was optimistic, though. In accounting, one voice muttered darkly, "If the board really wants him gone, that janitor woman will be the perfect excuse. We might be watching a coup unfold." Meanwhile, Lan had no idea what was happening behind the curtain of power. All she felt were the shifting stares whenever she passed by. Some smiles were warm, but others looked at her as if she were the enemy. That night, the CEO called her. His voice was low yet resolute. "Lan, you'll hear many rumors. But remember this, I will not back down. Whatever the board does, I'll still be here. For you." Lan froze, her hand trembling around the phone. Inside her, fear and joy collided. She understood now. Their story was no longer a private secret. It had become a public battle. The board meeting had ended, but the undercurrents were just beginning. Faces left the room with faint smiles and calculating eyes. The next day, a major financial newspaper ran a sensational headline. "CEO rumored in affair with low-level employee. Is the company losing its credibility?" The article didn't name Lan, but the description was so detailed that anyone at the company could identify her. Candid photos from the zoo, the CEO carrying Mai on his shoulders, were published alongside scathing words. "Can a leader who lets personal affairs run wild truly lead a billion-dollar corporation?" Lan's heart shattered when she saw the article. She knew instantly. This was the board's move. No longer whispers within the office. It was now a full-blown public scandal. Inside the company, the storm grew. Shareholders called incessantly, clients grew hesitant. Some contracts were even put on hold, citing the need to clarify the internal situation. That evening, Lan sat frozen before her phone, scrolling through vicious comments online. Trying to climb the ladder by seducing the CEO, huh? Cinderella story. More like a stain on the company. Tears spilled as she shut the phone off. Mai rushed over, hugging her, asking innocently, "Mom, why are people saying mean things about you online?" Lan choked back sobs, unable to answer. Meanwhile, the CEO sat in his office, staring at the article, fire blazing in his eyes. He knew this was no longer internal politics. This was outright war, and if he didn't act, he would lose not just Lan, but the company itself. He clenched his fist and whispered, "Fine. If they want a war, they'll get one." The next morning, the company was shaken when the communications department released an official press statement, personally signed by the CEO. In it, he did not deny the scandal, but faced it head-on. "Yes, I had dinner with an employee. Yes, I went to the zoo with her family and my son. But let me remind everyone, that woman is the very person who saved this company from losing $1 billion in mere seconds. If the public wants to know, this is not a shady affair, but proof of her talent, intelligence, and integrity." The company erupted. Never before had a CEO so openly defended an employee, especially a janitor, against the combined pressure of the media and the board. A veteran financial journalist commented live on air, "This is a bold move." He turned a personal scandal into a declaration of human value. Instead of playing defense, he went on the offensive. And interestingly, the public seems to be siding with him. On social media, comments began to shift. If she really saved the company $1 billion, why hasn't anyone mentioned that before? People love digging into private lives, but the truth is, she deserves respect. Maybe this isn't a scandal at all, but an inspiring story. Lan sat quietly in her small apartment, reading line after line. Tears streamed again, but this time they weren't from shame. They were from gratitude. He hadn't just defended her in the boardroom. He had defended her before the entire world. In his top-floor office, the CEO looked out over the city, sighing softly. He knew the battle was far from over. The board would not yield easily, but at least this time, he had seized the initiative. And deep inside, he knew. He wasn't fighting only for the company. He was fighting for the love growing in his heart. The CEO's press statement swayed public opinion toward him and Lan, but it only enraged the board of directors. A counterattack was carefully set in motion. 2 days later, multiple online news outlets ran fresh headlines. Janitor accused of exploiting CEO's trust for personal gain. The hidden past of the billion-dollar hero. They released fabricated evidence. Doctored photos of Lan carrying luxury shopping bags. Fake receipts suggesting she lived beyond her means. Online comments turned nasty again. See? Just a social climber's trick. So much for the fairy tale. She's just ambitious. Nothing but a gold digger. Lan was devastated. She knew she had never owned such things, but how could she prove it? In the eyes of many, the poor were always presumed guilty when linked to the wealthy. The CEO immediately summoned his legal team. Slamming the dossier onto the table, his voice was ice. "I want every photo and receipt traced, and if I find a single board member's hand in this, I'll drag them to court for defamation." His assistant hesitated. "But sir, such a legal battle will be costly and long. Is it worth it?" The CEO's fists clenched, his eyes unwavering. "She saved this company once. Now it's my turn to save her." Back in her modest apartment, Lan held her daughter tightly as tears streamed down. Little Mai asked innocently, "Mom, is it because you're with the CEO that people hate you?" Lan choked up, unable to answer. Deep inside, she knew. This love was facing its fiercest trial yet. They would either endure it together or lose everything. On the day of the company's press conference, the building swarmed with reporters. Camera flashes went off non-stop, questions firing like bullets. "Do you admit to a relationship with this low-level employee? Ms. Lan, have you used your influence to profit from the CEO? What do you say about shareholders threatening to pull out over this scandal?" Lan sat beside the CEO, her hands trembling, heart pounding wildly. All her life she'd only known mops and buckets, never hundreds of cameras aimed straight at her. The CEO squeezed her hand gently under the table, his gaze steadying her. Then he rose, facing the crowd of reporters. "Yes, I have a personal relationship with her, and I have nothing to hide. But remember this. She is the one who saved this company from losing $1 billion. Instead of attacking her, you should ask, why is the talent and intelligence of a janitor dismissed simply because she doesn't wear suits or expensive shoes? The room erupted. Some reporters who had come ready to attack found themselves stunned, their narratives blocked by his counter-question. Lan lifted her head, seeing his resolute face, and suddenly felt courage fill her chest. She stood, her voice trembling but clear. I never wanted fame. I only wanted to work and raise my child. But if telling the truth has a price, I'm willing to pay it. I did not steal, I did not cheat, I did not scheme. I only solved a problem others overlooked. If that is a crime, then judge me here and now. The room fell silent for a few seconds. Then a single clap echoed from the back. Soon another. And another. Until the entire hall thundered with applause. Lan was stunned, her eyes brimming with tears. The CEO glanced at her, smiling. He knew this moment was the turning point. From an anonymous janitor, Lan had stepped into the light, standing tall before the world. After the press conference, social media exploded. The hashtags, Janitor Saved 1 Billion, and Your Respect Lan shot straight to the top of the trends. People widely shared quotes from Lan and the CEO. I did not steal, I did not cheat, I did not scheme. I only solved a problem others overlooked. If you think I'll abandon the company's savior just to protect appearances, you're mistaken. International media jumped in. A European paper headlined, Cinderella 4.0, From Janitor to Billion-Dollar Heroine. The board of directors was in panic. Their smear campaign had backfired, turning public sympathy to Lan and bolstering the CEO. In a closed meeting, one director fumed. The more we attack her, the more the public pities her and rallies behind him. If this continues, our power will crumble. Meanwhile, the CEO sat calmly before the cameras for an exclusive TV interview. The host asked, don't you think openly defending Ms. Lan could damage your long-term career as a leader? The CEO smiled, his voice resolute. No, because this isn't just about defending an employee. It's about defending the truth and my heart. And if you want to know my next step, I'll say it right here. I intend to propose to her. The words landed like a bombshell. Reporters gasped, live audiences erupted, and Lan, watching from her small apartment, trembled so hard she dropped the cup in her hand. She stared at his face on the TV screen, her heart racing wildly. In that instant, she realized. This battle was no longer about keeping a job or keeping a seat. It was a declaration of war from a man who placed love and truth above everything else.